President-elect Donald Trump is suing the Des Moines Register and its top pollster, Ann Selzer, for quote-unquote brazen election interference and fraud over its final 2024 presidential poll, showing Vice President Harris leading him in Iowa despite his ultimate victory there in the Hawkeye state by 13 points. So we want to talk about this particular defamation lawsuit with our friend, legal analyst Tre Lovell. He joins me. And Tre, good to see you as always. We know, and we covered this over the weekend, President-elect Trump notched a huge victory over a media organization over the weekend. I'm talking about ABC News, this $15 million settlement that was reached over the weekend between ABC News and their anchor, George Stephanopoulos, over some of these inaccurate claims leveled by Stephanopoulos against Trump about the E. Jean Carroll defamation lawsuit that rendered a verdict that found Trump civilly liable for sexual abuse, not rape. That was the question at issue in this lawsuit. In this one here that Trump is filing, this is about a poll and a poll's results in one particular state ahead of the election. This was 2 weekends, I think, before the election. It got a lot of attention because it was quite a wild outlier, showing that Trump was down by 4 against Harris in the state of Iowa. Of course, he ultimately won the state of Iowa by 13 points against Harris here. Does Trump have a case, Tre?
You know, not really. I mean, first, there's a distinction. You know, the Iowa case, it's not really based on defamation. It's based on a consumer protection statute, basically saying that you can't, implement false or deceptive practices that people are going to rely upon, to their detriment. So what Trump is trying to say is, hey, the Des Moines Register, through its pollster, had a deceptive practice to manipulate the polling and actually make a false prediction, to try to hurt Trump and sway more voters. So the gist of the action is that. However, it's got a lot of difficulty in trying to prove it.
So according to Fox News Digital, the lawsuit was filed last night in Polk County, Iowa, under the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act and related provisions. It says it seeks, quote, accountability for brazen election interference committed by the Des Moines Register and Selzer in favor of now defeated former Democrat candidate Kamala Harris through use of a leaked and manipulated Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll conducted by Selzer and SNC and published by the Des Moines Register and Gannett in the paper November the 2nd. So 3 days before the election, not 2 weekends before the election. Just want to correct the record there. So this was very close to the election. He's citing and claiming, Tre, election interference that the poll rendered on the national electorate or Iowa voters. Tre, Trump won the election. Will that claim stand?
As I said, I don't think so, because there's no real damage here, right? He won the election, as you correctly pointed out. So even if the poll was inaccurate, it didn't hurt him in any way. Plus, if you kind of look at it, he's saying that the pollster intended to manipulate the poll so she could help the Democrats. But, pollsters, their credibility comes from their accuracy. The way that people listen to them, the way that people hire them is because they're good pollsters and they're accurate. So to think that they would take a dive or sacrifice their credibility, to choose a political side really doesn't make sense. And in addition, as you noted, there's no real damage here because Trump won.
So, Tre, I mean, before this poll was released 3 days before the election, showing that Harris was up 4 points over Trump there in Iowa, Ann Selzer, I just want to give a background for the viewers. Ann Selzer and her poll in Iowa was considered the gold standard. Obviously, Iowa is one of the first caucus states in the primary process as we are trying to figure out who the nominees for both parties are going to be in presidential elections and contests. In the wake of the release of this poll and the subsequent criticism of her and her polling company, she retired and stepped back from polling altogether. Of course, her reputation obviously taking a hit from this here. But does it give you pause? Should, I guess, journalists like myself and pollsters take pause and have concern that now the president-elect is going after some of them in a lawsuit because a poll came out that he didn't like. Does that give you pause?
It does, and the problem is that these lawsuits, the Des Moines Register lawsuit, the defamation lawsuit against ABC, the defamation lawsuit against the Pulitzer Board, a number of these other cases are not really meant to win. They're meant to push back on what Trump believes is a media that's against him and things that he doesn't like. And so the real reason for these lawsuits is not going to be to win. Most of them, if not all, are not going to win, except for the ABC lawsuit that they settled. But had that gone to court, that's questionable.
So Trey, I think the ABC settlement is somewhat of an outlier and an anomaly when it comes to so many of Trump's lawsuits against media organizations, CNN, the New York Times, most recently. Also, I believe it was $1 billion defamation suit he brought against CBS News over alleged editing of the 60 Minutes piece that Vice President Harris sat for before the election here. So he's usually kind of, 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 in some of these, but not over the weekend with the ABC case. So he's maybe riding high, and that is maybe why he brought this case. How is it going to do in court? Are we going to even get to a settlement phase here, or could this be dismissed outright?
There's a strong chance it could be dismissed outright. Because of whether or not it was actually reasonable to rely on it since it's a poll, whether there were damages, there's some pleading aspects. So there's a good chance that it could get kicked. But what it's doing is now when the media is going to write stories about Trump or publish or broadcast stories about Trump, they're going to take a second look and dot their I's and cross their T's because he's out there gunning. And that's what he wants. And so, Trump and the Republicans, I think, largely feel that they're going against a biased media, and the only way to fight back is to sue, to try to, cause a chilling effect. Hopefully, that then they'll vet out the stories or not be so much against them. So this is a very interesting strategy on both sides, with the media and with Trump.
So, talking about filing the lawsuits in particular, could you foresee or envision a scenario in which, Trump's legal team is not necessarily seeking damages, but maybe just an acknowledgement of, something that was incorrect and an apology? Could you see that being the ultimate result of this?
Absolutely. I think Trump wants an apology. I think he wants recognition that he was right, they were wrong, what they said about him was wrong. And if he gets that, I think he's ready to move on. He doesn't need the money. He's not doing this for the money, but he's extremely upset and agitated that all these negative stories are coming about him, and many stories that he believes are false. So if A, they stop doing it, or B, if they do it and they say they're sorry, have a retraction, I think that's going to go a long way with him as opposed to other people. It may not. So yes, I think that's what he really wants. And I think the media outlets would be surprised if they gave it to him, how quickly he'd back off.
Okay, Trey, though, if you're the Des Moines Register, if you're Mediacom, if you're Ann Seltzer's polling company here, and you saw what just transpired with the ABC News settlement of $15 million, I mean, you have to be really kind of girding yourself for a legal fight ahead. And, I don't want to say this because I'm not entirely sure, but I would imagine that, the Des Moines Register and Ann Seltzer's polling company don't have the funds or the resources like a behemoth network of ABC News.
That's true. And money is always a great consideration, whether they can afford it. It's kind of tough because, the only way the media is going to chill Trump is by fighting back and pushing back on every single case. And when he loses after loses, maybe he'll get tired and stop filing them. So they need to stand firm and not give in. But like you said, there's lesser solvent outfits such as the Des Moines Register and smaller newspapers who can't afford the fight. So they're going to have to be a little strategic in how they deal with it. And basically, it's calling up the lawyers and say, listen, what does he want? Does he want a retraction? Does he really want money? We don't have money, so this is not going to get us anywhere. Does he want an admission? And depending on what he really wants behind the scenes, that he's not going to say in public, to try to work within that. That's what good lawyers do for their clients. Okay. It's about the resolution and saving the client.
You know, if this does get to, a further along phase than it is right now, it's just been filed. We don't know when, the first hearing is. We don't know when lawyers are going to be meeting here. But say it does get to that stage, the Trump legal team is alleging that, the poll was created out of whole cloth in order to influence the presidential election here. Could you imagine a scenario where Ann Selzer is brought in and deposed, and she has to go through line by line her polling methodology about how she got to that result?
I mean, if the lawsuit goes that far into discovery where they're doing depositions, that's exactly what she would have to do. Because the standard is, you have this deceptive practice that you either know is deceptive or you should have known. So they're going to have, and the should have known me is a negligent standard. It's a lesser standard. So they're going to have to show that she was negligent in issuing these numbers and having this poll, and she's going to have to defend against that, or the register through her, by saying, no, we did everything we were supposed to do. These are what the numbers were. These are what the call said. This is the methodology. We weren't negligent. It just happened to be off. So she will have to explain herself and defeat, the negligence claim side of this, that she was negligent in this claim, in this poll. And certainly the intentional side doesn't make sense. As I said, why would she sabotage her own reputation, but to go for Kamala Harris? That doesn't make sense. But yes, she will be, if this goes further, she will be in the middle of it.
Yeah, and the Trump team is also claiming that the poll was leaked, in some capacity as well, 3 days before the election here. So we're just going to have to watch it. Tre Lovell, as always, thanks so much for your time and your expertise. We'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.